In Nokia phone, I will write this implements phone. Nokia phone implements phone. So when I write like this, then it's mandatory for the Nokia phone class to implement all the functions of the phone class. Okay, so in Nokia phone I will have to write, I'll have to move my mouse over the arrow and you select add unimplemented methods, and you will have to implement all the functions. Out here I am implementing all the functions, right? The question being asked is, what is the difference between interface and project? I think Radhika, you're getting confused over here. Day 2 is the project over here. Okay, and phone is an interface in that project. It can tell you what this project is supposed to do. For example, right, for example, if you look at the documentation of Selenium is a project. Okay, Selenium is a project by a company called ThoughtWorks. It's now many people have got involved in it, right? And if you look at the documentation, then we all know about the word WebDriver. Okay, what is WebDriver? WebDriver is actually an interface inside Selenium. WebDriver defines the functions, various functions. I'll come back to it, right? An interface tells you what the project is supposed to do. Okay, you got me, Radhika? Right? Now, if a class is implementing an interface, right? Nokia phone is implementing phone interface, then it's mandatory for it to implement all the functions of that particular class. If I remove one, I'll get an error. It is mandatory to implement all of them, right? What is this @override sign means? This means that this function is being implemented from the phone class. Okay, fine. Even if I remove this, it will not make a difference, but writing this can help the other person to understand that this function comes from the phone class. You can remove it, it's not a big deal, but better to write it. Fine. Now inside the call function I'll write Nokia calling, and out here Nokia switching off, right? So there are two functions over here, Nokia calling and Nokia switching off, right? Similarly, I can have another class. I can have a class like Samsung, which implements the phone interface. So as soon as it implements the phone interface, it will have to implement the unimplemented functions out here, right? And you can write out here Samsung calling, and you can also write out here Samsung switching off, right? So technically what I have done is I've created one interface and two classes are implementing that interface. Any number of classes can implement that interface. It's not necessarily only two classes. So all the phones which are made will be implementing this interface. So this will give me a kind of structure to the whole application. Just by looking at the phone interface, you will come to know that what this is supposed to do and what all phones will do, right? Now suppose I'll create a new class over here and name that class test phone. And in this class I create the object of uh, Nokia phone, and I also create the object of Samsung right. So I create the objects of Nokia phone and Samsung out here, and I write n dot call and n dot switch off. So when I run this, this prints Nokia calling and Nokia switching off. And similarly from Samsung phone also I can call the same functions, but this will be calling the functions in Samsung class, and this call will be calling the function from Nokia class. If you run this, I will get Nokia calling, Nokia switching off, Samsung calling, Samsung switching off. Only thing is that both the classes are different, but the function names are same. Maybe Samsung can implement the call function in a different way. Out here, maybe it has a different algorithm to call a user, right? But in Nokia call function can also have some different algorithm to call the end user. But the name of the functions are same, right? So this helps us. This helps us because if a new class is added tomorrow, suppose iPhone gets added, we will know that iPhone will have call and switch off functions inside it. So we really don't have to worry. Right? So the same thing is implemented in Selenium API as well. If you look at the documentation of Selenium, then Webdriver is the interface. And all these driver classes over here are implementing that interface. For example, Android driver, Android web driver, Chrome driver, event file driver, Firefox, HTML unit, iDriver, iPhone simulator, Safari driver, remote web driver. So all these drivers are implementing a single interface known as WebDriver interface. Whatever features are there in this WebDriver interface will be there in all those driver classes. For example, we just saw that to go to a particular URL, when I want to go to a particular URL in Firefox driver, hold on. Now Firefox driver, if I want to go to a particular URL, I call the get function. In Chrome driver, when I go to a particular URL, I again call the get function. And in iDriver, when I want to go to a particular URL, I again call the get function. This is because the get function is inside the WebDriver interface. Okay, the WebDriver interface is having the get function, right? And this get function is responsible for taking the user, it loads the new web page in current browser. So it is implemented by all these classes. No matter if you are using Android driver or Chrome driver or iPhone driver or iDriver, when you call the get function on the driver, it will get you to a particular URL. Okay, so this is the beauty of the framed interfaces. So that's how, in many interviews, they ask you the first question, what is WebDriver, and people, they just start making stories, it's the latest technology for automating this, that. WebDriver is simply an interface in Java. This is the technical answer to that question. And all the classes, all the the driver classes, they implement they implement that particular interface. Okay. Now, about the Android driver, people have been asking me questions that how to work with it. I am also working on it right now. Okay, in few days I'll be coming up with videos on Android driver and iPhone. Fine. And there is a misconception that you can test Android based applications with Android driver. It's not like that. You can test your websites, right? You can test your websites using this Android driver. Okay, and similarly iPhone, it's like an emulator. Okay, you work with the emulator on this. Fine. And now, okay, now one thing is clear, that all the driver classes would be having the same functions, right? Okay, now if I go back to my interface, phone was the interface, Nokia phone was one class, and Samsung was another, right? Now suppose,
Sorry to interrupting, Ashish.
yeah, tell me.
Ashish, in the interface, that phone interface phone, the piece of code,
Yeah,
there you are giving the two things. One is call, another one is switch off. So can we say these two is either is a function or a method?
yeah, these are functions.
Functions. But where we said that this piece of code, for example, call. So there should be some piece of code, right? What it should do, call. As
Yeah,
you said, algorithm, it may be implemented in a different way in Nokia and a different way in Samsung.
yeah.
So the piece of code for call resides either in phone interface or in Nokia or in Samsung. So what exactly the call or switch off will do?
Yes, the interface phone will just tell you that it has got two functions. Okay, the class which is implementing that interface, right, will actually provide the functions, their bodies.
Okay, okay, fine. So as your classic example, as you said, is just like a menu card, right?
Yeah,
So the menu card may be same across all the restaurants, but the way they make the menu
yes,
in a different way,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Right.
So by default, if it is a phone means it should have this function. We are now it's just a kind of framework, or we are just standardizing
Yeah,
interface called phone.
yes,
Right? So
yes,
whatever whoever is going to make any kind of phone, they should have all these things. But whichever way they want to implement, it can be done.
yes,
It's up to them.
yes.
Am I right?
Okay. Yes, that's right. These functions will not have bodies in the interface. You can, if I give bodies over here, I'll get an error. It's not supposed to have a function body, right? So
Okay.
it just tells you that it's supposed to do this, and whichever class will implement this will have to implement both the functions. Nokia phone cannot get away with just one function. It will get an error. It is mandatory for it to implement both ones.
Fine, Ashish. Thanks. It's clear now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, yeah. Now, one more thing. Suppose Samsung tomorrow decides that fine, it has got public void a new feature implemented in its phone. For example, find location, which is not there in every phone, right? So I'll just write inside it Samsung finding location. I think somebody pinged me. Right. Now, out here, okay, this function is not the part of interface. It's not being overridden from the interface. Okay, this is something which is only for Samsung. So if I go to my test phone, so out here I can also write s dot find location. So if you run this, this will print Samsung finding location. Okay, but there are two things. First of all, let me tell you something. If I try to create the object of interface, you cannot do it. This is one of the rules. If I write over here, phone is the interface, right? Phone p equals to new phone. I cannot do it. I'll get an error. You cannot create objects of interfaces. This is illegal. You cannot write like this because it makes no sense. Interface has got no definition, nothing. Right? You can create the objects of classes which are implementing the interfaces. Firstly, secondly, till now I have been writing stuff like this. Nokia phone n equals to Nokia phone. Now if I write like this, phone p equals to new Nokia phone, I can write like this. Or phone P1 equals to new Samsung, I can write like this. Now what's the difference between this thing and this thing? What is the difference? The difference is that by writing this, you can access all the functions in the respective classes. But if I am writing like this, reference of interface equals to new class which is implementing that interface, then I can access only overridden functions. That means if I access it like this, I can only access the functions which are coming from interface. I cannot access the functions which are local to the class. I cannot, if I write over here p1 dot call, I can do it. If I write p1 dot switch off, I can do it, right? But I cannot write p1 dot find location. P1 is the object of Samsung. You cannot do that. It will give you an error, right? So make sure that if you are writing like this, then you are only calling the functions which are coming from interface. Now when do we need this in Selenium? When do we need this kind of implementation in Selenium? In Selenium I can write like this: Webdriver driver equals to new Firefox driver. I can write like this right, and I can also write like right, and I can also write like this: Webdriver driver 1 equals to new Chrome driver, or I can write it in the primitive way, the way I was writing earlier. That is, I had written out here, right? Right. Now the difference between these two things is that out here I can access the functions in WebDriver which are implemented in Firefox. Out here I can access all the functions in Firefox which are coming from WebDriver interface, as well as the functions which are local to Firefox. But we generally do it like this. Most of the times you will find people doing it like this because there are hardly any functions which are local to Firefox driver or Chrome driver. Everything comes from WebDriver. And writing like this also gives us the flexibility of changing the browser we test on dynamically. Okay, how? I'll just tell you. If I just create a new class over here called as dynamic browsers, we'll do this when I tell you about frameworks and all. We'll be using this in frameworks. Okay, suppose I have a variable with me, string browser equals to I write Mozilla. Maybe this browser variable we can read from an external source like an XLS file, or from an XML file, or from a text file, or a property file. Right now I'm just hard coding it, but later on in frameworks we will read it from some external source. That is, this is the browser I want to test my application on. We'll make the WebDriver object initialized to null in the beginning. Right? This reference is not pointing to anything, and we can keep if-else statements out here. We can write that if the browser is equal to Mozilla, then driver equals to new Firefox driver. Okay. Else if the browser is equal to Chrome, right, then driver should be equal to new Chrome driver, and also I have to give the path of Chrome driver.exe. I have to set the path of Chrome driver.exe. Again, else if the browser is equal to I, then we set the path of iDriver.exe. So you can initialize your browser like this. If I run this, this will open Mozilla. You see that it opens Mozilla. And if I just go here and change the browser name to I, in the external source I'll change it and my Java code will read that, and if I change it, it will open I. And similarly, if I change it to Chrome, it will open Chrome. The advantage is that, okay, once the driver object is initialized, we can use the functions from the WebDriver interface. I can write over here driver.get the URL http gmail.com. So no matter which browser opens, every browser will go to that browser, and after going to gmail.com, fire the function driver.get title. This function will get you the title of gmail.com. So even if I am working with Chrome, I or anything, when I run this will simply open gmail.com, go to Gmail and simply print the title of this page in the output. You see that? Even if I change this to Mozilla. So this is the advantage of interfaces. That
Hello Ashish. Yeah, actually I just wanted to ask you something. Can I use Safari and Opera also? And can you just demonstrate it how we can use the Safari and Opera?
Apple has Opera is never. There is nothing like Opera driver right now.
Okay.
The browsers which right now we have are Mozilla. Okay. What is the main use of giving WebDriver equals to null? This is because I am not initializing it. Right? This means that the driver object reference is not pointing to any object. Dynamically, I make it point to a particular object. Okay? Right? Like I told you over here, you can write WebDriver driver equals to new Firefox driver or WebDriver driver equals to new code. What I did was I initialized it to null, that means it points to nothing. Right? Then depending on the browser name, I'm making it point towards the top. If you want to work with Opera, right, use Selenium RC. It's good, older language. So, right, any questions from anybody? Anything? So what I'll do is I'll end up for today. You get the meeting invitation for tomorrow as well. And if anybody has got any questions, please feel free to ask. Anything. Okay then. Fine. Alright, I hope you got the email yesterday with the links, and today also I will be sending you the email with the recorded sessions.
Thanks.